Hi, folks. Just a little video blog to explain something. I was talking recently about translating, and there was a meme going around for a while. Didn't get too much traction, but it basically was, like making fun of how, like in the movies, this ancient tomb and someone there's translating the "Do not enter lest ye die," something like that. Well, in reality, the poor translator is probably going there. Well, this word could mean hearth or fireplace or entrance or gate, depending on the situation. And then this next one, and depending on the context, could mean this, and really that's the way it is. You really can't do a straight translation a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with older languages and from cultures that differ a lot. And Japanese, old Japanese, is such a case. One thing that people should know right off the bat, I'm going to tell you, Japanese can be very precise. They did not build a semiconductor and electronic building block, by being vague. But the culture does like being vague sometimes. And so sometimes if you go back and read something in Japanese second time, you'll get more out of it, a little bit other view from different viewpoints, things like that. And yeah, it does, if the Japanese can use a word that can mean two things and they want to cover both, yeah, they will. And for this reason, it's a lot of people ask me to translate into Japanese, not just from Japanese into English, but from English into Japanese. And I really turn them down. Now, for some things, like if I wanted to put together how, a little note for a Japanese roommate on how to use a TV or the toaster oven, that's fine. But really, anything more complicated than that, then, first of all, you need a native speaker to translate into the language. So a native Japanese into Japanese, a native English speaker into English. First of all, just to get rid of some of the the mistakes, the howlers that you can catch them, and some of them are really exotic. I once was told, we had a really gay time. Okay, technically, some dictionaries you still use that term, but you might want to not use it when you're talking about something that does not deal with homosexuality. But when you're talking about literature, the need for a native speaker translating into the language that they're native speaker of is vital. Okay? This is why people like Donald Keene is a famous translator of Japanese texts, like The Tale of Genji, I believe. I'd have to look that up. Maybe he didn't do that, but he did a lot. He's very, very good. But really, you need that nuance if you're doing literature or historical works. And it's difficult, and that you can't just, essentially, you've got to be able to understand what the original thing says. It's not enough to be told that. Some people try to do that. There's other translators that basically get a Japanese to try to translate in English, and then the English person tries to clean it up. It doesn't work so well. You need to be able to look at a word and understand what the nuances of that word is. And even if you forget it, 5 minutes later, for a while, that Japanese person can say, okay, this is this verb, this is what it means, and this is and let's look at it in the context of the sentence and the text. And that's really important with some things. And I'm really proud, that I'm able to do that, when I had my wife, she was able to really look things up and explain things to me. So even if for a short while, I know what each word meant. And I'll give you an example that and really, if you want to talk about history or anything like that, you really do need to learn the language. That is the problem that a lot of people that are out there, they just want to learn, about the history of the ninja. And okay, fine. There's historical books out there about the ninja, but unfortunately, if you don't speak Japanese, you probably have only been doing this for a short while. If you learn fluent Japanese, you're probably going to pick up other things along the way, things about religion, about culture, about customs, and all these that just, okay, I understand this context. I mean, it's kind of like reading a text. I could throw something out, mentioning Sakamoto Roma. Okay, well, who's Sakamoto Roma? Well, every Japanese pretty much knows Sakamoto Roma, like all Americans know who Daniel Boone is, and all English school children know who Charles the Third is, or second. What are we on? I can't remember. But yes, so if you don't recognize it, and these original texts, everyone knew these things, so they didn't bother talking about them. And this is, that's one of the reasons why I came out with my book, Shadow Spirituality, is that, you just pick these things up by reading. If you're really into history and you start learning Japanese, then you're going to know things like, well, Inari. Inari is one of the shrines in Japan. It's devoted to agriculture. So basically, any place that has agriculture or had agriculture, you're going to find it in an Inari shrine. And there's two things that really is distinctive about an Inari shrine. First of all, they never go with just one tori, those red gates. They go with tons of them. So if you've seen a picture of all these red gates going down, that's most likely an Inari shrine. The second thing that is unique to an Inari shrine is that the guardians are not the stone dogs. They're white foxes, and that's important. And that, if you see a white fox, that is an Inari shrine, and it is devoted to agriculture. And I basically wrote this book just because I started things like, my friends, in martial arts had their little kamidama, the little god shelf in the dojo. And, well, I saw Inari foxes on them. I'm going, oh dear. Okay. Because, agriculture. No. You want one devoted to martial arts or something similar, at least. And that was, so I put this together of all these things, just who was Son Goku, what story did he show up in, why is it related to, 6-foot staff, things like that, and try to kind of fill in the gaps. But if you're translating these types of things, you need to know. And again, some of the, so it might seem like small parts, but it really is kind of important in many ways. Like in the Shoninki, okay, so the Bansen Shukai Shoninki, there's like a section where they do a whole thing with the sword and a fan, and I'm going to use a chopstick instead of a fan. I can't find my fan right now. And it's basically, it says lay the fan on the end, the handle of the sword. And well, what do you mean by that? Do you do it like this, or you do it like this? And really, in the Shoninki, just a section above it, they're talking about how you are so close to the ground, you can taste salt in it. There's been people on there. And that indicates to me that you're trying to keep really low to the ground, and that, yeah, if you lay this on the ground, boom, you've got this going like this. And this, if you got the right thing, basically allows you to almost vertical. And this is the whole thing about watching the horizon. This is the thing in it. But the key point is, that I take away from it, is the verb that they use for laying the fan on the sword is yokutowaru. Yokutowaru. And, well, if you've ever read Tolkien, and I'm rereading it right now. This is kind of why it came up. That section at the beginning, talking about 3 for the elves, 7 for the dwarves, was it 7, and 9 for men. And in the end, it's like, in the land of Mordor, where shadows lie. Okay? That verb, to lie, to lay, is yokotowaru. So somehow I don't think, like lay your fan, is like set your fan would be a different way. But to lie it is more, this is how I feel about this. But really, to be ethical, you have to kind of like explain that. And in my translation of the Shoninki, I kind of lay it out that, well, some people might think this, but this is what I'm going with, and explain both ways that it can go. Unfortunately, there are some people that basically not only give it one way, but they add text in the English to make it sound more like that's the way it is. That's not in the original Japanese. So yeah, that's my take on things. You really, do not ask me, please, to translate anything like literature into Japanese. No. I'm not qualified for that. You really need someone who's a native speaker of that language and can see the original text and understand what the original text is saying with their own eyes, not being told. to do that. That's what you need. And, again, you can argue all the time about how you should translate this. I took a lot of Japanese courses in college, and we had this one course where we sat around and we translated Oko no Hosomichi, narrow road to the far north, Matsuo Basho, famous poet. And we'd all have to, take a section home and translate it, and then we'd come out and read it. And there was like 20 plus people in the class. No two people had the same exact translation. Some of them, used different words, but to get the artistic feeling as well as the complete meaning, because again, nuance is everything in some languages. So that's a situation. There's good translators and there are bad translators. I try to be one of the better ones. Sometimes, maybe other people have different opinions, but really, this is key. Do not expect someone to just be able to look at a Japanese text, from the 17th century and just give you an A to B translation. Usually there's going to have to be commentary, explanation, things like that to really put things in context, things that, they knew, everyone knew, like the calendar and what it meant, and what gods are associated with what. That what makes things so difficult. And that's why almost every person I know that speaks fluent Japanese, and especially people that translate ancient texts into English, drink really heavily. And I'm no exception to that. Anyways, take care, folks.